Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our HealthCare Masterclass on our awesome brains. It's fantastic to welcome so many students back and your teachers as well, and we hope you had a really enjoyable half term. So today we are going to need the brain hats that you have hopefully made as part of your pre-work for this session. I have mine here, but it doesn't fit my head terribly well. We hope that you and your brain are ready to learn today, that you are feeling hydrated. And if you aren't and you have some water to hand, why don't you take a sip now? And I also hope that you had a good night's sleep. We wondered, what do you actually already know about how your brain works? If you have any thoughts on that, you can put them into the chat or make a note of them. Today, I'm really delighted to welcome quite a few of my HealthCare colleagues with me to the session, and you're going to hear from them during the course of our time together. We have Dimos, who is an MRI expert, who's going to talk to you a little bit about the anatomy of the brain. Lily, who works in our digital team, also with Aurora, who is an intern in that team, and Aurora is going to get you thinking a little bit about why having the right mindset is so important, and will stand you in really good stead. And last but not least, I have Gavin with me, who you're going to hear from in a moment, and he can tell you a little bit more about himself then. So to get you in the mood, we actually have a question for you. Can you name the types of products that GE Healthcare provides based on these pictures? And share your answers in the chat. And then I'll hand over to Gavin to let you know what the answers are. Okay, Gavin, over to you.
Okay, so starting at the bottom left, we're looking at this one. So you can see a patient laid on a table, and above them there's a nice device held by the radiographer, and you can see a little light field on top of the patient that's used for positioning. And this is a fixed rad X-ray room. So this is typically used for musculoskeletal stuff. So it'll be looking for bones, for breakages and things like that. But in recent years, we've improved these products to the point where we can now look at lung damage and things like that. So it's used extensively during the coronavirus pandemic for diagnosing coronavirus. And there's even AI algorithms that can tell you if there's a collapsed lung so that it can prioritize that patient's images to be seen by a doctor as soon as possible so that they can intervene. Okay, so the next one, as we move over to the right, you see a patient lying down on the bed, and you can see there's a probe pressing against the patient, and this is an ultrasound system. So this system uses sound waves to pass into the body and looks for the echoes to generate an image. This is quite often used for imaging babies because there's no radiation, there's no dose involved, it's just sound waves. But it can be used for a wide variety of things, including vasculature work, which is looking at your veins, placing needles if we're trying to do pain injections, and other things along those lines. This is a rather large full suite ultrasound, but we also have other sizes of product for different environments. So next we have a patient laying on the bed with what looks like a mat over the top of them. And this is an MRI. So this uses magnetic resonance imaging. So what happens is if you look at the big donut system, the big donut piece in the middle, there's a big superconducting magnet in there. And as you pass the patient into that magnetic field, it causes the water molecules in your body to vibrate. And we then have a bunch of receptors that listen to those vibrations and generate images. The mat you can see being placed on the patient is a body coil. So what this does is get a much closer view of those vibrations, and it gives us a much clearer image. Moving over to the right, we see that there's a nice C-arm with a patient laid on the table. This is one of our surgery products. So quite often when you'll do a surgical procedure, you might want to have X-ray imaging as well. And this is what this does. So they can be wheeled in for the piece where they need the X-ray imaging, and then they can wheel it out of the way to do the rest of their surgery procedure. So it gives a much more flexible source of imaging in a operating environment. This particular one can actually generate a 3D image as well. So it's almost like having a CT scanner in the hospital. So you can place the stent or put the injectable into the right place, then take a CT scan to make sure that it's in the right place, and that saves then taking the patient down to CT to find out if they did the right thing, and then potentially having to bring them back to the operating room. So it's a much faster process, and it improves the way things work. So up at the top of the screen, you see there's lots of circles around lots of different devices. Now this is a picture of an intensive care ward. So when patients go and have operations, usually for a period of 2 to 3 days, they need very close supervision to make sure that they recover properly. Even patients that are on a good recovery can have a 5 or 10 minute moment where they're really ill and they need intervention right then. And a really simple intervention can bring them back, and ignoring them for half an hour can send them all the way the other way. So what these devices do is monitor the patients, and you'll see that there's a bunch of screens right at the front, and this allows one member of staff to monitor multiple patients at the same time. And this means that instead of having to have a member of staff with every single patient, you can have one member of staff monitoring and then send your team to the right patient at the right time. Okay, thank you. And I think we'll hand over to Lily.
Perfect. So I think I'm going to start with just a very quick introduction on how do our brains work in terms of the anatomy and the cells and the neurons. So Dimas, would you like to get started with the next slide?
Yes, of course.
Thanks.
So right on this slide, we have 3 videos. Starting by the one on the left, the larger one. Essentially, in the brain, we have two large regions. One is called gray matter, and the other is called white matter. Both of those regions comprise different portions of the same cells, and the cells that both gray and white matter are comprised of are called neurons. So what we see here is called the body of the neuron, which is essentially the nucleus, contains all the DNA, RNA, all this genetic information, essentially. And a bunch of those together comprise what we know as the cortex, the gray matter. This is the decision centers. This is where the information lives from. For example, when you want to move your hand, when you want to move your foot, when you want to do some involuntary movements, anything pretty much. This is where the information lives from. Then it gets propagated through this thing, which is called the neuraxon, and then it reaches the bodies of other neurons. And this is how the electricity and the information is propagated from the cortex to the anatomical organs that do its action. So if we can play this video again, here we see a single neuron in isolation, and what it's trying to do, it's trying to find other neurons, and this is what's happening. The neuraxon gets prolonged, and in an attempt to find its friends, its neighbor cells. However, because this neuron is in isolation in vitro, it's in a lab and has no other cells, then it gets prolonged a lot without any success. Now, if we go into the next video, we have connected under the microscope, optical microscope, and we have an extra neuron here which is trying to see what to do, essentially. And now it's trying to get attached here. Something's going wrong. Yeah, pretty much this is what's happening. And then same thing on the third slide. This is also in isolation in vitro, but with a bunch of cells, not just the one. And that's pretty much it for this slide.
So if you go to the next slide, we're going to have a bit of an activity now. So if everybody can use their phones and go to menti.com, and we're going to have a think about all the different roles our brains play in the morning just to get ready, okay? Just to get up in the morning. We'll get started with a bit of a quiz using your brain hats. Okay, so using your brain hats, which part of the brain woke you up in the morning and got you out of bed? Okay, so your brain hats are there. Have a look at the different lobes, different areas. And let's see if you can spot anything. So if you just woke up, what is the first thing that you would do? All right. So we've got temporal lobe. Okay. So what do we think the temporal lobe will do? The hearing, the speech, facial expressions and smell. Okay. And then lots of lovely answers. Frontal lobe, I like that. Yep. So frontal lobe, what I noticed on my brain hat is that there was a bit on telling the time. So yes, one of the first things I would do is try to look at my phone or look at my watch or the clock and tell the time in the morning. So that's using my frontal lobe. And then the temporal lobe, yeah, is all about hearing. So listen to your alarm as well. And so for right eye, yep, you use your eyes to see as well. Well done. So I think we've got some great ones there. And 87 people. Wow. Okay. Perfect. Shall we move on to the next one, please, Ross? So the next one, let's have a look at what's. So now, after we got out of bed, we're now getting dressed. So what do we need to use? Which parts of our brains do we need to use to get dressed? All right. Oh, perfect. Sensory cortex already. Yep. So that's the one I was thinking of because that's the one with all the body parts, right? All the, like brushing our teeth, moving our hands, getting dressed. Okay, motor cortex, yep, that's all about movement and balance. Yep, you need some good balance to get ready, especially putting on your socks. Sensory cortex, yep, that's nice and big, perfect. And occipital lobe, what's there? Yep, the eyes, so yep, you'll still need to see. Lovely. Fantastic. Yep, the fact that sensory cortex is the biggest, you all got that correct, so fantastic, well done. And shall we move on to the last question?
Yeah, let's do it. Still a lot of answers coming in, actually.
I know. I'm loving it. But I like the fact that sensory cortex is still nice and big. Followed by
I like the person
cortex.
whose brain's exploding, because to be honest, it really is so amazing when you think of all the things that your brain's doing for you all the time.
Without even noticing, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yummy. So now you can smell breakfast cooking and you go downstairs to eat it. Which parts are you using now? Which parts of the brain, shall we say? So yes, nose and mouth. Not quite the brain. I'll give you that. The temporal lobe again, yes, you can smell it. Yes, you can smell the breakfast cooking. Definitely. I can smell the toast and the bread and everything. So that's nice and big. Sensory cortex again. Yeah, you'll be moving. You'll be moving down the stairs, moving your body parts. And then what else do we have? It's moving too quickly. Motor cortex, I see. Temporal lobe. Yep. And then temporal lobe, lots of temporal lobes, which is fantastic. Parietal lobe. So know your body. So that's a very knows where your body is in a 3D space. So you definitely need to know that when you're moving down the stairs, right? So fantastic, lots of responses. But yes, temporal lobe is the biggest one that I can think of as well. So I hope that gives you sort of an idea that some simple stuff we don't even realize, we use so many different parts of the brain just to get what we need to get done. So can you imagine all those neurons firing away in isolation, but imagine millions and millions of them all doing it in the brain. So that's my very technical explanation of how it all works. So if I pass you back to Demos, who then is now going to talk about how our brains work with music, okay?
Perfect. So with the Sean's slide earlier with all the medical instruments and the technology we had, the second from the right was the MRI scanner. So in the MRI scanner with some advanced technologies that we currently have, well, what we've had for the past 20 years or so, we are not only able to get some pretty pictures of the brain, anatomical pictures that can show us, where stuff is, but we can also get functional information out of it, which means essentially here. Actually, let me take control again so that you can see my mouse again. So in here, when we see this word, the bold activity, this means blood oxygen level dependence. So essentially, the basic principle is that when you are at rest, when the brain is at rest and does nothing, it still has some activity because it still gets blood, it still gets oxygen, it still needs to be, a living tissue, not disintegrating. But when you do something, like, for example, at this time you are hearing me and you are understanding what I am saying, and you are sitting on the table and you are not falling down, you do all this stuff at the background. So, excuse me. So essentially, under precise experimental conditions that must be repeatable, we can measure the amount of brain activity in the brain during certain tasks. So essentially, what some scientists did here was they measured the bold activity when listening. They put the patient in the scanner, they put some headphones to the patient, they gave the patient some of his or her favorite music to listen to, and they tried the same experiment on two different types of people, on people who are professional musicians and on people who are non-professional musicians, just ordinary people. So what they saw was that the bold activity in tasks related to understanding and hearing music was much greater in the professional musicians. Why this happens is going to mention in the next slides about the neuroplasticity. Essentially,
Oops.
it's okay. The brain trains itself to overperform, to perform better in certain tasks it's experiencing. So in musicians, they have a lot of experience in storing music memories, retrieving them, imaginarily playing this music in their brain, regions that are related to this task, and overall the percentage of correct prediction of notes, I mean predicting the next note that is going to follow, was higher in musicians than non-musicians. And this is some interesting. We see here a coronal slice of the brain. And here we see the superior temporal gyri, which stores templates of sound patterns, which means if you've heard the song a lot of times, this information is stored here, and this is why when you hear it on the radio a month afterwards, your brain goes, "Oh, I remember this." This is how you retrieve the memory. And the other areas that are involved in here, and colors here also show you the location, and you can also find them at your brain hat, pretty much.
Dimos, can I ask, so do you think that we should all learn an instrument then? Do you think there's a case that everyone should learn an instrument so that our brains get sort of smarter?
Yeah. I'm not sure if they get smarter, but they definitely get more efficient and effective. And it's a like, you know, when you want to go to the gym, you can have like a leg day, a chest day, arms day, so you work out some certain regions at a time. But the same thing can happen to the brain, of course. But music, and especially reading and playing music, like reading the notes and playing them as you read them, this is a full brain workout because you coordinate, especially for piano and you use your memory areas, you enhance the plasticity and your plasticity of the brain to make the connections thicker and better, and also the regions, the high function regions in the cortex being more dense as well. So yep, that's it. Much. Yes, play instruments. Yes.
Thank you, Dimos. Okay, let's carry on and pass back to Gavin now, our next session of this session.
Hi, thank you. And just to echo that note, musicians make up the highest paid coders on the planet. So of the top 100 highest paid coders in the world, something like 95% at last count were musicians. And it's because of the pathways that are activated that's the case. It just makes things easier. If you want to go to the next slide, and we'll start talking about failing our way to greatness, the human brain. So if we go back in time to, well, not that far really. So back before 1964, people believed that when you were born, you were clever or you were not clever. And that was it. That was your lot in life. So everybody that was really good at things was born that way. They were just that way. And everybody that wasn't good at things, well, unlucky. They got a bad start in life, and that's all they're going to have. So a lady called Dr. Miriam Diamond in the 1960s actually managed to prove that this wasn't the case. So from around 1920, I think it was, people had started to notice that children from different backgrounds that were given activities to do beyond just go to the mill and pick up cotton seemed to follow the pattern of families that had historically been more academically focused, and this resulted in some studies on rhesus monkeys that changed their environment to see whether that made noticeable differences between one set of monkeys and another set of monkeys. But the first scientific papers were published by this lady, Miriam Diamond, and she put a bunch of rats into an empty cage and some rats into a cage on their own. And these were the control rats. And then she put rats into cages with activities. So you can see there's some wheels for them to run around on. They've got a few friends to play with, all the rest of it. And when they looked at the brains, you were able to show that the rats that had enrichment activities had more had bigger brains. Okay, so by giving them more things to do, their brains grew, their brains got stronger. And this was the first scientific study to show the link between enrichment and intelligence. So it's not that you're born clever, it's that you have the opportunities, you have the interactions, and you work at it. So it's a path. So everything you've ever done, you once did for the first time. So if you think about those of you who have younger siblings or little cousins, or have ever come across a toddler in around the 12 to 18-month range, you'll note that they try and start walking. And the first thing you'll know about trying to start walking is you get it wrong. And that toddler will fall over and fall over and fall over. But the more they do it, the better they get. Can we go to the next slide, please? Sorry, I'm clicking on the screen and it's not doing anything. And this is a pattern that you'll see throughout your entire lives. Okay, everybody comes into every activity with a different starting level of ability, but you're not just born to this. So the babies aren't born able to walk. They have to start practicing and doing it. And what's going on there is every time you start doing a new activity, your brain uses your existing neural pathways to do that activity. So if you look at your brain hats now and think about that baby standing up, okay, so the baby's got a whole bunch of muscles that are going to have to be involved. They're going to have to use their eyesight, they're going to have to use their balance. And when they're a baby, they might not have used this very often. So that the links between those areas of the brain don't necessarily exist. So if you think about your walk to school, you could go to school in about 100 different directions. So you could come out of your house, turn away from the direction of your school and start walking, and then turn left for 20 turns, and then go to school the way you would normally go. But now that you know how to get to school, you're not going to do that ridiculous route. You're just going to walk in the right direction. And this is what's going on in your brain. When you first try and do something, it takes whatever route it can to get the job done. But obviously that path going all the way around is much longer. So the coordination's not there because it takes longer for these signals to pass. But if you start doing something again and again, your brain goes, well, actually, I'm doing this path quite a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive a new path. I'm going to make a new road. And this is what this is the neurons being developed, and this is what we call neuroplasticity. So if you're always using your eyes and you're always using your hands, and the motor cortex and the visual cortex have been used together a lot, your brain's going to build a path so that that can happen faster. And the more you practice activities that are involved in using your eyes and using your hands, the more pathways are going to build. And it strengthens your neural network. And another interesting thing, a bit like going to the gym where you get strong and you use your muscles when you're lifting weights, if you stop lifting weights, after a while, those muscles go away. And the same thing happens in your brain. From around the age of 8 to 16, around half of your neural pathways will be destroyed because you no longer use those ones because you have new ones. And it's not a bad thing that they've been destroyed, because if you think about what we're talking about with the really long route around the outside, well, if you've got a really long route that you don't use anymore because you've got a super highway going on, well, you don't need that. So let's get rid of that and let's make space for the fast connections. When we talk about learning, repetition's the key. The more you do something, the better you'll become at it. You think about when you were around 7 or 8 years old and you were doing the times tables, and you could, when you started, they were difficult, and by the time you got towards the end of the times table phase, you could make adults around you feel inferior because you're so quick at doing the what's 7 sevens, what's 6 8s, because you're practicing, those links have been made and you're getting really good at doing it. But as you stop doing your times tables, as that repetition goes away, some of those links will still be used for other patterns, but those direct, specific links start to go away, and it becomes a little harder because instead of going direct, you're going the long way around again. So you've got to keep going throughout your life, keep working on your brain, keep giving yourself activities, keep enriching your life. But the key here is that everything starts with failing. You try to do something, you fail, and you move forward, and your brain makes the links to make it work next time. So now we're going to talk about, if we go on to the next slide. Okay, so if we go on to Menti, we're now going to ask the question of, has neuroplasticity worked for you? So I want to think about an activity that you once struggled with, but now that you've done repetition, you're good at doing it now. So we talked about the little toddler managing to stand up and do some walking. Obviously, the first time they do that, I'd be surprised if they didn't fall over. I'm sure there's someone somewhere on the planet that managed it first time, but every child I've ever seen's fallen over quite a few times on the way, and I'm sure I did too. But I don't remember that, strangely. So let's see what activities we've got. Dancing. Yeah, so dancing, very similar to the baby starting to walk. First time you try and do some balancing stuff, you're not going to have those pathways. So it's gonna have to be a practice. With activities like that, it's not just the brain going on. You're going to have the muscle strength and the core strength, and you're going to have to pull those muscles together as well. So again, it all works together. Ballet, same line. Drawing. So when you're drawing, you're using your visual cortex. You're processing the images. You're controlling your hands to move the pen around, and then you're going to have to build that. And particularly with drawing, you start off being able to do stickmen, kind of deep, hard patterns, and then as you get better at it, so I've heard, I'm not the best artist in the world, I'm still at the stickmen, but people that are good at drawing can grade their images, so they can use the same pen to make 10 different colors or 10 different shades. Guitars, we've talked about that. With music, there's a lot of muscle memory involved. There's a lot of audio. Sorry, tongue's too big for my mouth today. There's a lot of auditory going on, and the more you practice, the better you get. Pull-ups, they're very much a motor cortex kind of area. You know, there's a lot of muscle involved. It's the same principle that the more you do it, the stronger you get, so the better you get at it. So yeah, there's some great examples of activities that you've tried, failed, kept going, got there. Excellent.
Someone's asked what kills brain cells the most.
Lack of activity. As long as we're not talking about putting specific chemicals into your body. So if you stop learning, that's the end. You know, it's a downhill slope. You have to work on it. The same as going to the gym. If you don't go and do those exercises, you'll feel yourself becoming less strong. And if you stop doing maths, if you stop doing conversations with people, if you stop playing instruments, your brain will see that you're not using those pathways anymore, and it'll just get rid of them.
There's a couple more questions coming through, which is great.
Yeah.
But what I suggest we do, we're going to now switch things up a bit because we want to keep ourselves stimulated. So we thought we would actually do a bit of a brain puzzle for you. So now's the moment for the teachers to hand out the Tangrams puzzle sheet if they haven't already. And what we're going to ask you to do is to cut out the polygons on the Tangram and see how many shapes you can make with it.
Do you want us to do the questions while they're doing that?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's have a look in the chat, shall we?
Okay, so how can I increase my brain cells naturally? So we just covered this with neuroplasticity. So the more things you do, the more you enrich your life, the more your brain will grow. So if you spend all your time doing one specific activity, so let's say I personally enjoy playing video games, so that's auditory, a little bit of muscle memory, but I'm not doing much outside of sitting and looking. So my motor cortex isn't getting the workout it needs for the larger muscles. So you need variety in your life. So if you just do one thing specifically, you'll get really good at that. But if you want to grow your brain, if you want to be really good at attacking new problems, then you need to do lots of different things. So if your life is focused on one area, consider doing a hobby that's outside of that. And if you don't do it already, try music. It's great. You don't even have to be very good at it, because like we've said from the beginning, you start off failing at things, and it's doing it again and again that gets you there. Okay. The next question: our brain cells die after the age of 21. So before that age, we need to fully develop our brain. So this is not exactly the way it is. So there's a bit of conflation. The problem with the internet today is that we can get all the information that's ever been written about anything. The great thing about science is it's a moving target. So everything I was taught at school, I would not be surprised if from the science fields, at least half of it has now been proven to be something different. So the facts are things that have been thought about, proven, and then it's our best guess in the science field. And if we find out that actually that's wrong, that's not the end of the world. That's brilliant. That's a new area of study that's opened up, and that's how we keep moving forward. So as we talked about with Murray and Diamond proving neuroplasticity, our brains don't stop growing. They only stop growing if you stop enriching your life and using them. So by the age of 16, about half of the neurons in your brain, those neural pathways, half of those will be destroyed. And this is where some of that confusion comes from, because there is a destruction of the unused neural pathways, but that's not your brain dying. That's your brain going, we've not used that for a while. Let's get rid of that. We've not used that for a while. Let's get rid of that. If you think about your toy collection when you were growing up, might have had lots of cars, lots of Barbies, and at some point you stopped using them. So you get rid of those to make room for your new activities. And that's all that's going on in your brain. You're just getting rid of the things that you're not using anymore to make new space for more neurons. What vitamins repair brain cells? I'm afraid I would have to Google it. What I would say is in the UK, it's generally considered that most people without a specific medical problem with a varied diet will get all the vitamins and nutrients they should require. If you're concerned that you don't eat your 5 veg a day and things like that, then a simple multivitamin is enough to fill in those gaps. There's very few people out there that really need extra supplements without a medical cause that you'd personally be very well aware of. The one big recommendation you tend to see is vitamin D during the winter, because living up in the north, we don't see the sun very often.
Mary, so if you could just move to the next tangram slide. So some of the some people, I guess, will be making their own shapes, but these were some of the ones we wanted to see if you could try to make using your polygons. I think Dimos did answer that question as well. He said that no vitamins would actually repair brain cells.
What part of the brain do we use the most? So that depends on you. So like I was saying, I play a lot of video games, so I'll use my eyes a lot. I'll use the parts of my brain that control my fingers a lot. But I don't run anymore, so the parts of my brains that control coarse movement probably don't get used as much. I don't play musical instruments as much as I used to, so that part starts to shut down. If you do an activity day in, day out all the time, the parts of the brain that are involved in that activity will be the parts that are used the most. So really, it's a question of what do you do? How dreams work? I've no idea. I eat cheese and then I get some really weird dreams. I had a panicked dream last night about a kiwi that's possibly too ripe to be eaten. I'm not sure why. I feel like it might have been telling me something else going on in my life. But yeah, dreams are weird. And there's a whole area of scientific study around dreams. And if you're really interested in it, I suggest you go down that rabbit hole. I won't pretend that I know what the answer is.
So you might be wondering why we got you to do this Tangram puzzle. And I would imagine that some of you probably have found this quite an easy exercise. Maybe you do this kind of thing in your spare time already. So the key thing is you might have practiced it, or it might be something that came quite easily. But if it's something that you're actually finding quite hard, what I would challenge you to do is maybe try this again tomorrow, the next day. And I think what you'll find, and what we've heard from Gavin and the other speakers already, is that if you practice something, if you repeat it, you create those new neural pathways, and things get quicker and easier. So practice is so important, as we've heard, but also another thing that's so important is having the right mindset. So Aurora is now going to give you some pointers on how you can develop a more flexible mindset. So over to you, Aurora.
Thanks, Ross. And yes, I'm going to introduce you to the concept of growth mindset, which is this mental approach, I would say, that will show you how powerful can be acting on your brain and on its neuroplasticity. So I guess that with this Tangram game that you have just played, you could experience that success never comes without making some mistakes. And in fact, every process can be seen as a trial and error process where we need to make some attempts and iterate to make the right adjustments. So I know that most of the times we are kind of scared of making some mistakes or fail, but we shouldn't, because mistakes are an intrinsic part of everyone's journey. And they are also even more than this. Like Gavin told you before, fail can in fact be seen as the first attempt in learning. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Marlisa. So fail is like the very first step that will allow you to learn, improve, and grow. And this concept is at the basis of growth mindset. So a person with a growth mindset believes that abilities and understanding can be developed. So like Carol Dweck said, who is like the mother of growth mindset, is the understanding that success comes from having the right mindset rather than intelligence, talent, or education. And right mindset is the one eager to improve and to embrace every experience, even failure, as a learning opportunity. Its opposite is the so-called fixed mindset, which assumes that abilities and understanding are relatively fixed. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So people with a fixed mindset, which is actually our default mindset, I would say, believe that they are born with a certain intelligence, skills, and abilities that can change. And as a result, when they fail at a task or face a challenge, their fear that they might not succeed often stops them from progressing. So to make an example, if a girl with a fixed mindset encounters a challenging task or experiences a setback in math, she's more likely to believe the stereotype that girls aren't as good as boys in math. On the other hand, if a girl believes that doing math is a skill that can be improved with practice and learning, she may think, okay, maybe girls haven't done well historically, maybe we weren't encouraged enough, maybe we didn't believe in ourselves, but these are actually acquirable skills. And this is what adopting a growth mindset is about. So pushing ourselves to try new things and approach them with curiosity, believing that we are capable of making improvements, and allowing ourselves to make mistakes and, of course, learn from them. And this actually leads to a lot of advantages and benefits. At first, we can develop new skills, of course. Then we can explore and make new experiences. And finally, we can develop confidence and not succumb to the stereotypes. So we can now look at this athlete, if we can go to the next slide, Laura Kenny, as an example of a girl with a very strong growth mindset. Laura Kenny, in fact, was born a month prematurely with a collapsed lung and was later diagnosed with asthma, which is a respiratory problem. And when she was a kid, she enjoyed and competed in trampolining, but she had to give up due to this respiratory problem. However, despite this difficulty and of course the related frustration, she started cycling with her sister and she realized that she was really enjoying the sport. And then training after training, race after race, and of course failure after failure, she became the most successful female cyclist. And she's now the most successful British female athlete in Olympic history with 6 Olympic medals. And this example clearly tells us that success never comes straightforward, but in smaller steps, and when we are capable of developing this growth mindset that isn't scared in front of failures. So if you can go now to the next slide, please. Usually, I'm sure that when we think to reach a goal, whatever the goal is, could be either pass a math exam or win a sport competition or do this tangram game that you are playing now, things are like this. So we think that if we know where we want to go and we are prone to reach that goal, then things will work and go well. Actually, this is a magical word. In fact, if Marilisa, can you play the animation? Yeah, things are more likely to be like this. Maybe not always this tricky and complex, but often, if not almost always, we encounter obstacles, unexpected problems because things simply come up. And we can't prevent them. We can't even control them. But we have control on what we, on how we react and on how we behave in front of problems. So if we can go to the next slide, we can now see what growth mindset in action looks like. At first, we can act on our attitude. So we can try to develop the bionic mind, which stands for believe me or not, I can. And this means saying to ourselves that in some way we will come out from the difficult situation that we are experiencing. Maybe at first we can't even imagine how, and we can't even succeed at the first attempt. But then if we say to ourselves that we can find a solution, we will be able to find a solution, we will for sure. And this means being aware that we have the energies and the resources to cope with the difficulties. And if it seems that we don't have them now, these energies and these resources, actually we don't have them yet. And this explains the power of the word yet. So it's not that we aren't capable of doing something now and always, it's that we aren't yet capable of doing that something. And the final strategy we can adopt is being flexible. So act on the neuroplasticity of our brain. So once set with the right mindset, the right attitude and awareness, we can start to subdivide the problem in smaller steps. In fact, if we look at the problem in its whole, of course, we are scared even of approaching it. But if we divide it in smaller journeys and we focus on one at a time, then things start looking more approachable and easier. And this flexibility at the same time means also being able to remember ourselves that if we are experiencing a confusion or if you're feeling stuck within one of those steps, then this is part of a bigger journey that will lead us to reach our goal. So all of this is what growth mindset is about. And as you could hopefully understand, is a very powerful tool that explains how acting on our brain, on its neuroplasticity, could really make a difference in what we do and in how we feel. Thanks. And next slide. So that, yeah.
So we have one last thing that we'd like you to do today, helping to embed some of the things that we've been learning about our amazing brains. So what we're going to show you in a minute is 5 relatively what we might call boring brain facts, or they could just be called important brain facts. So on the left of this slide is an example. For example, the brain weighs about 1.5 kilograms. And what we want you to do working in pairs is to make one of those brain facts more memorable. So for example, with this one, you could say the human brain weighs about as much as a duck-billed platypus. So this is a kind of quick fire task. And once you've made your fact more interesting, we just want you to pop it into menti.com so we can all take a look and find what makes those facts more interesting. So if Marilisa goes to the final slide, you have a choice of 5 brain facts to jazz up. So the first one is about 75% of your brain is made of water. The second one is the human brain contains approximately 100 billion neurons. The third one is short-term memory lasts about 20 to 30 seconds. And the fourth one is your brain uses 20% of the oxygen and blood in your body. And the last one is brain activity can generate about 12 to 25 watts of electricity. So choose the one that you'd like to work on with your partner. And as I said, pop it then into menti.com. And we're just going to do that up until 10 o'clock or just past 10 when this session finishes. And also, if you do have any other questions, just pop them into the chat. So I will go back into Menti in a minute and open up the right page for you to put your fact into. I think it's quite hard to choose because I actually think, yeah, to me, they're already quite interesting already, but I'm going to be interested to see what you do. So remember, you're trying to make the facts slightly different, more interesting. If you have a phone or computer, you could do a little bit of quick research. But just wanted to thank all our HealthCare speakers today. I really enjoyed listening to all the great information that you shared with us. And we'll be back with you in a couple of weeks for our Spotlight on Healthcare Careers. I think that's on the 13th of March, where we've got some really great speakers to talk to you about their really interesting journeys.